What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Hope all's good wherever you are. In this video, we're going to watch a clip from the most recent Piers Morgan Uncensored episode. The full episode will be linked in the description below. And in this clip, we're going to watch Michael Knowles absolutely obliterate the former blue-haired cuck, the now brown-haired cuck, Destiny. They also had Tomi Lahren, she'll be the blonde lady on the panel, and the insufferable new puppet from the left, Francesca Florentini. Let's get into the video.
Apparently, people will vote for a corpse over Donald Trump.
They will, and please let them do it. Let the partisan Democrats do it. I'm now all in on the Democratic rhetoric. The Democratic primary voters have made their decision. They want Joe Biden as their nominee. It would be an assault on the integrity of this country and on our sacred democracy if they replace him now. I can't wait to see him in all 50 states. At this point, obviously, the man is not up to the job. So someone else is running the country, whether that's Jill, whether it's Ron Klein, whether it's, I don't know, whether it's Barack Obama.
Do you know what's really interesting, Michael?
You know,
this is really interesting to me, this panel, because if we'd gone back, 3 months, you'd have all been shouting at each other, arguing about Trump. The two siding to the Democrat side here on the panel, you've been neutered by what's happened. I can feel that the luster has gone. The enthusiasm to beat up conservatives has just flown out of your bodies. I mean, there's not been one argument. You've all just sat there going, we agree, he sucks. Your own guy sucks. He's barely alive. You've lost your fight, haven't you? Biden has removed the fight from Democrats. That's what I'm seeing here.
Not.
Absolutely. Actually, I agree with that.
You agree?
I totally disagree. No, if Donald Trump is taking insane, again, the Supreme Court ruling today is unbelievable. The idea that instead on today's show, we're going to focus on whether or not Biden had a bad debate performance is just reflective of the, I don't want to say agenda in a negative way, but of what you want to talk about today on this program. Like, I think that the decisions that are being made right now legislatively in the Supreme Court are more important, or that are being made in the Supreme Court are more important.
You know why that's happening?
Whether or not Biden has a bad.
You know why it's happening? Because Trump was able to put 3 judges on the court in 1 term. You know why that was? Because you put up a terrible candidate, Hillary Clinton. It was incredibly polarizing, very arrogant, very superior, and she got flatlined by Trump when no one saw it coming on the Democrat side.
And
secondly,
one.
some of your Democrat judges who should have known better decided they weren't going to resign. They weren't going to retire. And because of that, Trump was able to pack that court. So I'm afraid you reap what you sow. Just very bad politics by the Democrats.
One of those Supreme Court justices were literally lost by McConnell just robbing a president of the right to seat a judge. Nobody remembers that Garland was supposed to be on the Supreme Court for almost a full year. McConnell said, we're not going to have that hearing. That is indefensible.
Let me bring in Michael here.
Oh, my God.
Tommy has to leave in a moment. So Michael, come to you, then come back to Tommy for a final wrap from her. But Michael.
Destiny, the principle that you're articulating that a president should be able to put a judge on the court in an election year, or rather that you say Mitch McConnell violated, was a rule first articulated by Joe Biden in the 90s when he was trying to kill George Bush's judges. So obviously there was a decision today. It said that the president has some immunity for criminal acts or acts committed in his official capacity as president. And this is based on a 40-year precedent. It really goes all the way back to the Marshall Court. Really nothing should be surprising about this. And yes, the Democrats are upset. They're
not true. This is
just
based
let me
on
finish
precedent.
1 second, Destiny. They're inveighing because they say we should be talking about the immunity case. Well, but part of the articulation of I just was reading the decision was that, look, this is the first time that you've got a president who's being prosecuted in this way. And that's the problem, because the vast majority of Americans, right, left, and center, have been saying in survey after survey that they view the prosecutions of Trump as primarily politically motivated. They view this as kind of corrupt. And that's one of the reasons why Biden's poll numbers have been so bad for so long. And so they throw this Hail Mary to do a debate in June before either party has settled on a nominee. And it completely blew up in their face. And so no wonder people want to talk about it. You've got a political order that is fraying. You got a guy trying to put his opponent into an orange jumpsuit. And it turns out the guy who's trying to do that, it has applesauce for brains. No wonder people are concerned.
I must say I've quite enjoyed this new, and I'm going to call it a very positive resurgence of Piers Morgan on this type of content. He's blowing up with it, having political YouTubers on there. Is that what we're calling Michael Knowles a YouTuber? I guess people know him from YouTube first, though. He's a public speaker, author, but I think most people know him from social media. These debates are always going viral. The comments are always great. He gets both sides, the left, the right commenting. And he's somebody, Piers Morgan himself, that I've not always agreed with him in the past, and I still don't. But I'm turning the corner on him a lot. I think the last few years have really turned him more into I guess a more of a conservative person than I think he used to be. But then again, I am no Piers Morgan expert, but I did enjoy the line that Michael Knowles just said about Joe Biden having applesauce for brains. Because let's face it, we're not far off of that if you've watched the debate between him and Trump. Now, Michael Knowles is somebody who I watch his show on a daily basis, or at least I try to catch the highlights of it. And he does think that Joe Biden will be the nominee come November. And I am of the camp that think there's a reason that they had this debate so early. Maybe they wanted to see, the Democrats wanted to see if Joe Biden can actually hold his own. But I think it's because they knew the man's got dementia and they wanted a reason to get him out of there. Now, who are they going to replace him with? If they do replace him, do they make Kamala Harris the nominee? I guess you could, if Joe ever steps down, you can have her be president for a little bit before the election. The problem with Kamala Harris is I do think that people dislike her more than they dislike Joe Biden. Another point that Michael made about the left is that people are seeing that these Trump indictments are politically motivated. The guy had 32 counts of indictment. Nobody can tell you what the crime was. Absolute malarkey. Let's get back to the video.
People, a bit like the British, I think would be the same in this position. They can smell a political hit job. And the fact that the first case that was used against Trump to try and convict him and put him in prison involved a payoff to a porn star 20 years ago for a supposed one-night stand or whether it happened or not, that just smelt to them like a massive overreach. Whether he did it or not, they didn't care. As though the idea that the first American president in history to ever be convicted of a crime in a criminal court is convicted over something so pathetic and trivial. The American people, the right-minded, reasonable people who are not in the kind of mad tribal ends of their parties, all went, well, that's ridiculous. And actually demeaning to the country. Destiny, I could see you thoroughly agreeing with everything Tommy was saying there.
It's just, Francesca, I think is the name. I agree with her. The thing that Democrats suck on, that we're missing, is this blind allegiance to a leader, literally no matter what he does. It is the engine that powers Republicans. It allows them to lie for their leader. It allows them to excuse horrendous actions by the leader. It allows them to look at a president and after decades of saying, oh, we need to limit the power of government. Oh, we need to limit the power, say, well, maybe the president should actually be above most criminal prosecution. Also, as a quick thing, you keep saying that, no, it's just partial immunity for official acts. What is an official act of the president? If you actually listen to the oral arguments that were presented before the Supreme Court, what that act even is and the ability to even probe for it is stuff right now that is now presumed to be immune. For instance, just a real quick thing. When Donald Trump is asking Pence, hey, can you throw out the election because I don't like the results, which is a real thing that happened, by the way. As much as Trump's like to say that's not true, that is counted as an official action because these are the roles of the president and vice president, deciding how to count the electoral votes. That is insanity to me. If Biden were to do anything even remotely similar, Republicans would lose their minds.
Have you read the decision? I know it just came out this morning, but have you gone through the decision yet?
I read up to page 25, and part of it, I can read it out to you. He explicitly calls out that whenever the president and vice president discuss their official responsibilities, they engage in official conduct, meaning that presiding over the January 6th certification proceeding, at which members of Congress, yes, so that did count as official conduct. So if you thought that he was trying to do a coup, try to steal the election by saying, hey, do you think you can throw those votes out? Well, that's beyond prosecution.
You can dispute or object to any actions that Trump takes, but it is simply the case that when a president is carrying out his duties and is speaking to his subordinates in the White House, that is obviously official business. If he were to bring in a bunch of, I don't know, drug dealers and hookers or something, that would probably be an unofficial crime, not related to his duties as president. And the reason that this matters and why it's really a moderate decision is because it goes back about 40 years to Nixon versus Fitzgerald, which found out that the president, yes, indeed, has quite a lot of immunity from at least from civil liability. And then the reason that this is such a novel bombshell case is because until Joe Biden tried to throw his rival into the clink, we didn't prosecute presidents because that's the kind of behavior typical of banana republics and tin pot dictatorships. But the argument, and I'm sure you've read this, even if you've just read the first 25 pages, goes all the way back to the Marshall Court. It goes all the way back to the finding that the presidency does have certain privileges. It's not totally beholden to the other two branches of government. It's got an executive privilege. We have a separation of powers here. It goes back to the Federalist Papers when the framers of the Constitution said that they need a vigorous presidency because the problem with the first American Republic, which was the Articles of Confederation, was that you didn't have any strong executive power. So this is not something new. This is a perfectly in keeping with the American legal tradition. And now the Democrats are really upset about it, not because it's an upending of American jurisprudence, but because they're going to actually have to run on their guy. They're not going to be able to cheat and throw the guy in jail or take him out of banish him to St. Helena. They're going to have a fair and square election, and they know they're going to lose it.
Yeah,
Can I just ask,
guys, if you enjoyed these videos, please consider subscribing to the channel. Help it grow. Leave a thumbs up on the video. It really helps your boy out. Let's get back to it.
quick question. I just want to hear just a quick question. Yeah. So you're saying that if a president were to order the assassination of a presidential opponent in an election, you're telling me that if he thinks it's for national security reasons, you defend that as being above any kind of review for criminal prosecution? You would say, well, that was an official act as president, right? I answer that question. I really want to answer that question.
Obviously, Destiny.
I can answer you if you don't interrupt. You're bringing up one of the important questions that was raised during the oral arguments, and it's an argument against the case that Trump's team was making, but it doesn't really pertain to the actual judgment that came down, because they didn't say that the president gets to do whatever he wants. He doesn't get to go and assassinate his rivals. He doesn't get to do this, that, or the other thing. But he does have
Sotomayor
a very
had that in her
robust
dissent.
scope.
She said he could do that, and it'd be beyond review. She put that in her dissent. I did read her dissenting opinion. So how would it be not part of the official job as president? They order drone strikes, don't they? They order the military, don't they? He's the commander-in-chief, isn't he? Why wouldn't he be able to order the strike and say, you can impeach me if you want, but you can't hold me criminally liable. This is my official act as president.
Sure. Well, I mean, even the aspect of impeachment is kind of secondary to that, because the Trump team was arguing that if you want to go after a president at all, you've got to do it through impeachment. And the court said, no, you can actually prosecute former presidents for crimes that they committed in office. So the fever dream that you and other Democrats are creating of what this decision implies is not actually what the court said. The court gave a very moderate opinion that said that certain aspects that are conclusive and preclusive within the scope of the executive branch, he has full immunity, and he's got partial immunity around the peripheries, and then he could be criminally liable outside of that. And if you're asking why, President Trump standing on Fifth Avenue and shooting his rival in the face, how we could possibly prosecute him for that, I think you just don't have any faith in the American legal tradition. And I think you're making an absurd argument to try to justify something that actually does upend over 200 years of American tradition.
You guys all think that, Biden's a criminal mastermind. He's trying to lock up his opponents. Piers, Michael, he did it to himself. I'm sorry. He did. He didn't have to pay off the porn star by cooking his books, by falsifying business records. Thank you. You're welcome.
You know what happened?
Right? Like he just did it to himself.
Francesca, the problem is, from the moment he got convicted of that crime, what happened? He raised $150 million in one week.
From billionaires, but not from everyday people. Ordinary people aren't giving to Donald
I've
Trump.
not
If
met
anything, they're just not going to vote
I've
for
not
him.
met any American since that conviction who doesn't just feel a bit embarrassed.
Why
A bit
fundraising
embarrassed it
after this
ever
last debate?
happened. It was embarrassing for America.
I'd also
for
like
everyone.
to correct the record, if you don't mind, Piers, because Francesca said that I accused Joe Biden of being a mastermind. I have never once in my life accused Joe Biden of being a mastermind or even possessing one.
Where are we heading with this, do you think? Talk me through to Election Day. What do you actually think is going to happen?
Even if what you'd like to see happens, Francesca, even if it's Newsom or somebody, you still have to contend with the fact that the Democrats would then be skipping over the first black woman vice president with the whitest guy who has ever walked the face of the earth. The case of Gavin Newsom.
Hang on. There's actually a little twist in that, which Bill Maher got onto, which is if Newsom is the guy, he can't have Kamala as his vice president because they're both from California. So it would only apply if she actually wanted to run for president. But if he was to become the nominee, he wouldn't have to have Kamala Harris because he wouldn't be allowed to, because they're both from California, which is an interesting part of this equation. So they could put him in. I mean, they would be overlooking her for the top job, but he wouldn't have to worry about getting rid of her from the vice presidency because he wouldn't be allowed to have her. So that's just it's an interesting little part of the subtext here.
Sure. I still think the look is pretty bad, though. If she wants the top job. She ran for it the first time.
Right.
And, she also launched her campaign back in 2020, we now forget, on Joe Biden's alleged racism and on the issue of busing. So she's, there's no love lost here between Biden and Kamala. I don't think he wants to pass it to her. I don't think Biden cares all that much for anyone else in the Democratic Party. And I think he's wanted to be president since he was in the womb.
Yeah.
So if you know, in terms of how do we get to November, the only way that Joe Biden leaves the ticket is if he chooses to, or if one of his caretakers choose to. And so to Destiny's point, I actually kind of understand why you would say, I'll vote for an urn over Donald Trump, because what you're saying is the president doesn't really matter. It's run by a committee and the administrative state, and it'll just keep kind of chugging along, and that'll be fine. The problem, though, with that argument for voters is that everything has gone to hell in a handbasket since Biden got elected. So, you know, you were mentioning earlier, Ukraine or Israel or this or that. All I can remember, and Trump made a good point of this during the debate, is for the last 20 years, the only president on whose watch Vladimir Putin hasn't invaded more land is Trump. He did it under Bush. He did it under Obama. He's done it under Biden. He didn't do it under Trump. During Trump, we had peace in the Middle East, believe it or not. We had the Abraham Accords and Israel and Saudi Arabia becoming buddies. There's a town in Israel named after Donald Trump. I wouldn't have guessed it either, but it happened. Now, of course, we have this major outbreak of war. You don't need to take my word for it. Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, said that the reason that the Russians invaded is because of American weakness, specifically Biden's, and the fact that Biden actually invited them and said if it was a minor incursion, he wouldn't do anything. So you might dispute all these things and say I'm missing the point or something, but the voters clearly agree with me on this. This is why Biden's so low in the polls and why the majority of them don't think he should run again.
Again, Piers Morgan with this style of content blowing up. These videos are all great. I'm finding myself watching the long form of his videos almost every time one comes out. He gets people reacting to the content like myself, gets more people engaged with it, gets more people watching it. Good for him, because these conversations are important to have. And props to Destiny, even though I disagree with the guy, that he is having these conversations. There's so many academics on the left that they like to complain and they like to try to get people canceled and stifle these debates, but they're not willing to go in and debate themselves. So props to him, but Michael Knowles absolutely crushed him here. Again, guys, if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead, subscribe to the channel, help it grow. Leave a comment down below, smash that thumbs up button, it really helps me out. I'll catch you all in the next video. Peace out, everybody.